Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. This is it, the final push of the first day of Festival Media Global 2016, the 10th edition. What a wonderful 3/4 of a day we've had so far. We've heard about content, we've heard about data, we've just had a wonderful debate on viewability. Let's put all that together and let's look at how we use content, how we use data, and how we get to those consumers in the best possible way. To do that, we figured that most people have a mobile phone in this room, I hope. So we figured we'd have a session around geolocation and mobile. And to take us there, we have an excellent panel, which includes 2 presidents, which is pretty impressive. So you can woo if you want. But without further ado, let's welcome our panel to the stage. First, we have Harry Dewhirst, who is president and co-founder of Blis Media. Next, we have Lisa Donohue, the new global brand president of Starcom. And then we have Paul Jeszensky, the Director of Online Marketing and Media Buying. It is Paul Jeszensky, Airbnb. Woo! I will leave you to it, guys.
Well, the introductions have been done for me, so that's a couple of minutes shaved off. So, you've all heard of Airbnb. You know, I've used Airbnb many, many times, both as a host and as a guest. So I've rented my apartment in Singapore. This is my listing on Airbnb. When I moved to San Francisco, I decided it was the best thing to do is live on a houseboat in Sausalito. So through Airbnb, that's exactly what I did. Beyonce spent $10,000 a night to stay in this quite fabulous place, and I hope to do the same one day.
With Beyonce, right?
Yeah, well, I don't think that comes in the 10,000. So, amazingly, Airbnb, whilst it's a household name today for the most of us, you know, it's only an 8-year-old business. So, you know, I guess what I want to start to talk about and learn from Paul and Lisa is, you know, how do you build a household brand in just 8 years? So it'd be great to hear from you, Paul, around you know, that journey.
Cool. So I'd love to ask the audience here today, how many of you work with a founder-driven company? Yeah, a couple of you guys do. So for those of you who do, you know very well that when you work with the founders, it's really personal. You know, and at Airbnb, our 3 co-founders spent about 2 years broke, right? People told them it was a crazy idea. And so you can imagine when you have that much belief in what you're doing, and you go through that much, it's like a baby to you. So Airbnb to them is like a loving part of their family, and they think about the brand and everything we do with that lens. And so we start with that, and we think about where we've come in 8 years. What you're really seeing is the sort of 2 bookends. We've got these founders who are super passionate, very value-driven. The other side, you have our community, right? We've got 2.3 million listings on Airbnb in 191 countries and 35,000 cities. So we have a huge amount of people. And you've got those 2 things. So when we're thinking about building our brand, we really have to think about what's our job as marketers. What part of that do we get to play? And I would say that our job is really about empowerment. So empowering our community, having them speak for us, and curation. There's so many great stories that come out on our platform. And so with that in mind, about 2 years ago, we realized that we were moving out of our sort of childhood as a company into our awkward teenage years. And to kind of bring those stories to light and really own that, we needed to build a proper brand team. And so that's when we partnered with Starcom, and we built a top-tier brand marketing team to really drive that forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to pick up on something that Charlie said this morning, they actually went at it a very different way, and that was that they chose Starcom to be the global marketing partner first. And then from there, the Starcom team was actually part of the Airbnb team that was part of the creative review process. And so the Starcom team was in all of the pitch meetings with the creative, and then we're actually part of the selection process. And I think that was just really indicative of understanding media's importance and how it changed and has risen in terms of being able to understand people, identify the right audience segments, and then more importantly, know how to engage them as a community, because that's really what Airbnb is, a community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Lisa, how does working with a business that's growing at such pace compared to other clients that you have that have been established for decades, how does that differ when you work with such a dynamic company versus ones that have been set in their ways in some respects for such a long time?
Yeah, absolutely, very different. If you actually pick up on what Paul said, so for a founder-driven company, the Starcom team has to have that same personalization, right, as Airbnb does. So the first thing the team did is just literally, and Paul can attest to this, just planted themselves in the office 24/7, and so that they really understood exactly what Airbnb was all about and what really was the higher purpose and vision. So there's that part of it. Then there's the notion of we have to bring the right balance of agility and discipline. So you have to be very agile when working with Airbnb. But at the same time, one of the expertise that we bring is discipline, is the step back at times to say, does this ladder up to the strategy of what we're trying to accomplish? And we do push them many times to take that step back and a deep breath to make sure that we're on strategy. And so that's definitely been a part of it. And then the other thing, which I absolutely love, which is different than legacy marketers, is the fact that these guys are absolutely fearless. And today, so many legacy marketers are trying to hold on and defend what they have. And these guys are absolutely fearless. They have the passion and their vision, and they just absolutely rush out and embrace it. And I'll actually just tell one story in the US. So Caitlyn Jenner, who I think most people are aware of within the world, so she obviously, her story was going to be honored at the ESPN ESPY Awards. And within the United States marketplace, as soon as that was announced, many marketers started abandoning the broadcast because they did not want to be associated with transgender and with Caitlyn Jenner. Meanwhile, we called up these guys and said, humankind, this is exactly what this is about. And you actually ended up with the iteration that was transkind. And they were absolutely fearless about it, never hesitated for a minute, and you get to run with ideas like that.
Do you think that agility that you mentioned before, do you think that has an infectious nature on the rest of your business? Do you think you maybe, by working with these types of clients, it helps push others?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. This is an on-demand piece of business. I mean, I have hand raisers all the time around the world, obviously, because we do work with them globally, who are dying to partner on the business. And it is infectious. And when you see how this team is so fearless, then they take that back to some of our other partners who obviously are legacy, right, clients. And it is absolutely infectious.
Yeah, I mean, we really treat the team like our own. So for better or for worse, I'm amazed by the team for how much pressure we put on them and the hours that they're expected to work. They're basically working a startup while being our media partner.
And we spoke before about community-based brand building, and that's how you've got to where it is. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, I'd love to, but I'll start off with a little story that I think really explains it well. So Bob Blair there in the front, who's one of the people on the Starcom team supporting us, we shared a cab this morning. He shared this funny anecdote. Lisa's probably nervous now. Bob's a good storyteller.
With Bob, I'm always nervous.
Yeah, and so last night he spoke to his son, his 12-year-old son, and his son said to him, "Hey, Dad, it's not fair. You get to go to Rome and hang out with your Airbnb client and eat gelato late at night and do all these fun things. And like, what do you guys really do? I mean, Airbnb is a website. All they do is they get a bunch of people to come on and list their homes, and they do all the work. That's amazing. I want a business like that when I grow up." And Bob said, "That's a great idea, son. It's a little more complicated, but that's the right idea. Keep pushing." But there's a core idea in that I think is really brilliant, and that is that he understood that our business is a people business. People think about us as a tech company. They think about this website, this app. And that's important, right? That technology facilitates what we do. But really, it's about the people. And so that's what we talk about as our community a lot. And so everything starts with that. When you think about that, and kind of what I mentioned before, the founders in this community, it all comes from that place. And so we think about our community, especially our hosts, as our heroes. So Nike thinks about their heroes as athletes, right? When you see their advertising, you see athletes featured prominently. They want you to understand that you could achieve your own level of heroism, as an individual. We want to really celebrate our community, the hospitality they bring, the way they bring that idea of belonging anywhere, which is more than just a tagline to us. It's a vision, it's a mission, and bring that out to the world. So we're doing everything we can to curate that and to make sure it's clear that that's who we are.
And in terms of, of course you have hosts everywhere from Antarctica to South Africa. because of that, how do you maintain global consistency with messaging whilst being locally relevant? Because of course it's an incredibly personal thing to let someone into your home or indeed go into someone else's home. So how do you kind of make that connect?
So I think there's an interesting stat I could share around that. The first thing to think about is this. 86% of people who use Airbnb tell us that they do it to live like a local, right? They don't come to Airbnb for value. Obviously there is value there. But when you look at Airbnb, there's a wide range of experiences. You can come in on the low end, you can come in at the high end like Beyonce, right? And so people come to choose what they want. When you look at travel, a lot about travel is about commodification, it's offer driven, and we don't do that, right? We're really talking about that humanity aspect. And what that comes down to is location. It comes down to destinations and people who live there, right? So we really are location first. And so what we do is we think about our campaigns globally. We work with global teams, but we have regional and local offices and teams to sort of transcreate everything we do and make sure it's relevant locally. And it's the same with our partners. So we have partners on the media and the creative side in each of those locations as well, and we make sure it's relevant.
Yeah, so we've really, from day one, we built out the global team, obviously based in the US, given Airbnb's headquarter, but then just have the teams around the world very localized, no regional or pan-regional or anything, just very localized to be able to take those strategies and bring them not even down to a country or city level, but obviously down to the neighborhood and to the individual person level.
In the early days, did Starcom staff use the service? Were they encouraged to rent out their house or go and stay in Airbnb properties to kind of
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In fact, most were already heavy users, candidly, in terms of it, because, as mentioned, obviously, it was only a couple years ago that they, made the leap to do the brand marketing. So our teams were already heavy users, and then obviously that's just increased.
I think we've actually got a couple of very short videos that Airbnb have used in a couple of markets, Ireland and France, to connect with that audience.
Airbnb has literally allowed me to follow my passion. Designing furniture was just a hobby. It was always construction carpentry I did. I decorated the apartment and put it up as a private room. Now I have extra money to buy materials, more time to focus on design, keep doing what I'm doing, while meeting guests and meeting new people. Everybody I know that has done it has had a positive reaction. That's what it's all about.
L'activité Airbnb est un vrai petit plus. Et j'ai commencé à proposer un studio en septembre 2014. Les gains, c'est un week-end en plus, s'aérer à la campagne, pouvoir s'échapper de Paris. J'ai 3 enfants, dont Colette, qui a 12 ans. Sa préférence, c'est vraiment les escapades. Donc on part très tôt le matin et go l'aventure. C'est vraiment l'occasion d'être proche de la nature et c'est surtout un moyen d'échapper complètement à toutes les contraintes du quotidien. Grâce à Airbnb, c'est notre parenthèse.
Fortunately, I'm fluent in French, so I understood all of that.
Actually, one thought, it might be really interesting, I think, for the audience, Paul, where we started, right? Just hitting straight on the notion of stranger, right? And that was where we first started with, and then morphing through that to where we are today. I think that might be interesting because that's a different place than where most marketers might start.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. So one of the things that our co-founder, Brian Jeszensky, and CEO, talks a lot about is this idea of stranger danger. And so you think about Airbnb versus other hospitality companies, you're really thinking about, you're going to be staying with someone you don't know. Right? We've all accepted as sort of a social norm. You go to a hotel, you check in, there's a set of rules, kind of a thing around it, right? And so what we find is that the biggest hurdle we have to cross is to get across that stranger danger, just kind of a chasm of that strangeness. And then once people do, their retention rate's really huge. If you have a 5-star experience the first time you use an Airbnb, your likelihood to keep coming back is tremendous. It's probably leading anyone else in the industry. And so what we need to do from a brand point of view is get people through that. And so last year we launched a campaign which we call Never a Stranger, and it starts off with that whole concept that says, Dear Stranger. And the woman who goes through the journey around the world, she's talking about that. She's narrating the fact that she's overcoming that fear. She says things like, my friends thought I was crazy, right? So we're addressing that head on, and we're continuing to build on those sort of themes with our current advertising. Right now we're really focusing on this concept of living somewhere versus just going somewhere. So it's that sort of duality between commodification and living like a local. But yeah, the Stranger Things big.
Yeah, it really was, because you had to address that head on, because without that, we actually couldn't get to the localization that we're doing, because that wouldn't matter if you didn't feel comfortable and safe in community. And so it was a very strong, bold move to just hit that straight on, and in a very human way, and then you get to belong anywhere, right,
Yeah.
which is ultimately the vision. And now that really loosened up our ability to get so localized, because the consumers and the hosts, both, right, are very comfortable that it's not strangers, right? It's people like us.
So Airbnb is, of course, defined by the locations it's in, and we at Blis believe that people are defined by the places that they go. Now, in terms of your digital advertising, how have you leveraged that understanding of people's whereabouts, either current or historic, to influence that?
Cool, so I think the first thing to talk about that topic would be that when we think about our marketing, we don't just think about it as media and marketing, we think about it as part of the product. And so we try to think through from the product experience all the way through. So those of you who've seen our homepage, you'll see, there's videos on there. You'll see that we bring in our marketing campaigns. We try to bring it in a very authentic way. Same with our app. And so with the latest iteration of our app, you'll see that we have, some of you may see it's not 100% rolled out to the public yet. It's about 50-50. If you're in the beta test, you get to see it. But you'll see that we have this thing of guidebooks, where we get aggregation of recommendations from our hosts, and we push it in so that when you go to a destination, when you're researching a destination, you can see those local recommended experiences. It's kind of like the opposite of TripAdvisor, right? TripAdvisor is saying travelers are aggregating, they're giving us these reviews. It's what other travelers like you have seen. It tends to be the big tourist attractions, right? When you look at our list, it's completely different, so you can live like a local. So we take that as our base, and then we build out to bigger media. And I think that the most recent example that some of you may have seen would be for host recruitment. It launched in Europe, so in Paris and London. We had out-of-home placements. We worked with Blis to extend that so that we could see where you were at when you went by, your interaction with it, and then target you based on that. It was a very successful campaign.
It was a wonderful combination of both the out-of-home and the mobility, but at the same time, it was a combination of the quote, brand marketing and the host marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So capitalizing on host recruitment by how they may be interacting with the overall brand message.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, balancing that marketplace of hosts and guests, and there's a supply and demand piece there, and I think there was a over interest and less supply. So acquiring hosts was a key part of the campaign.
Yep.
And obviously there's less hosts than there are guests. So that means targeting and utilizing targeting tools and data was key to the success of doing that. And seeing people who are regular travelers and therefore away from home, for example, was an obvious way to tap into an audience that could become an Airbnb host.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When you look at Airbnb as a platform, I think one of the interesting things is that there's that stranger danger component, but it's probably bigger for a host than guests, right? The idea of traveling and staying in a home with someone is a little more normalized. We've all stayed with a friend or family when we've traveled. As Airbnb's gone mainstream, a lot through the brand work we've been doing, we're getting to a place now where we need to normalize that host experience. We need to get people understanding that it's a normal behavior. There's a lot of rewards from doing it, and so absolutely.
So Lisa, outside of Airbnb, how else have you leveraged the advent of location and being a tool for digital marketing, with other customers or other industries? And where do you see the future of that?
Yeah, so obviously a ton, and its mobility in general is so important to marketing as we go forward. I think obviously there's a lot we do on dual media or dual screens, like we talked about here in terms of the out-of-home plus the mobile device. I think on the location, you started to touch upon it, but there's definitely a different type of segmenting and understanding some audience segmentation based on their location, their patterns, what are they visiting on a regular basis, whether it's museums, whether it's stadiums, et cetera. You can start to do a different type of segmenting, but then more importantly, you now can serve up more dynamic messaging real time. One of my sort of pet peeves about the industry is that so much data has equaled programmatic, which is equal cost reduction. which is so underselling the power of data, versus data, in this case, very much as a business driver, right? So how am I identifying audiences, and now how can I actually serve them dynamic messaging? I can serve them sequential messaging, which the mobile device and data really enables that, which also sequential messaging means I can do more storytelling. And typically people said, oh, the mobile device, the screen is small, I can't do much with it except offer a promo. But actually the reality is there's a ton you can do, and data enables that. And then real-time feedback.
You bring up a great point, Lisa. I think, to my point earlier about commodification of travel versus experience and living like a local, it's the same thing with media. All of us, we work in media, tend to be this pressure to commodify it versus adding value. And we should all be thinking about how can we add value? How can we add value to the user? How can we make it a more enriching experience? How can we make them actually want to consume it? When we look at a lot of the trends happening in the industry, we can see that consumers are reacting negatively because we're not adding value, right? And so we're all responsible for adding more value.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in this age of big data, what innovation does that fuel when it comes to creative? You touched on earlier that as a media agency, you were involved very closely with the selection of Airbnb's creative partners, which is, I guess, quite a forward way of thinking. How is this new empowerment influencing what you're able to do creatively?
Yeah, so I think, so again, I touched a bit. I think the sequential messaging and the dynamic is important. I think the other thing is focusing on the different stages of the consumer journey, right? So every marketer has a consumer journey and actually has thousands of consumer journey based on the different consumers. And people have different barriers depending where they are in the journey. And what data enables us to do is identify the different journeys and where they are in the journey so that we could, again, serve up different messages depending what the barrier to entry may be. And we have the ability to do that now with data. What I'm really hoping is that more of the content and ad agencies will understand the power of that, right? And the power of doing that and having 10,000 messages, right? Rather than one, because there's a wonderful canvas out there for us to use. And be more personally relevant, right? Which is the power of the data and one-to-one at scale.
Yeah, I think there's only really just scratching the surface of that.
Totally.
I mean, it's relatively straightforward to insert certain things into messaging in real time, be it where you are, for example, find an Airbnb in Birmingham tonight. But that's relatively basic. As you say, it could be tens of thousands, and there's no conceivable reason why it couldn't be millions of creatives for millions of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
To kind of build on that, though, Jonathan Mildenhall, our CMO, he talks about this a lot, about media connections. And so, our media partner, Starcom, they do a lot with us on the creative side. I'm not going to break out a lot of examples right now, but they're bringing creativity to the table. For him, it's all about creativity. He's obsessed with it, and he wants every portion of our team to be adding to that, to be bringing creative ideas, to be challenging, to be thinking through how we can bring that idea of experiences, which is what Airbnb is about, and make sure it comes through in what we're doing. So yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
So beyond utilizing location data, what are the kind of the latest innovations that you're getting excited about in terms of applying to your marketing strategies?
Sure. So I think the most important thing is really, there's no silver bullets. We'd all love to know, hey, what's the cool thing Airbnb is going to do? Let's go try to do it too, right? But we're media people. We understand that really you're trying to get the personalization at scale, right? So how can you get that most personalized individual message out? But you need scale to make it pay off. So when we think about our media planning, we really think about 3 buckets. It's now, it's the big things that are going to get us the brand awareness, get us the consideration that we need, make our money work hard. We have a new bucket. So what's the new things we're testing? What are those kind of interesting things that will get more personal? And then next bucket, which is the really small amount of money we'll spend to get that innovation, to push the envelope. There's not going to be scale there, but we have a feeling it's a bet that it'll be big in the future. So to kind of walk through that, if you go to our site and you look for vacation rental properties, so like look in Sonoma or Napa, California, you'll see that we are starting to have virtual tours now. It's like a 360 view versus just a series of pictures, right? So that's kind of a now example. It's not media, but it relates to that. You may see that come into some of the media. This sort of the new might be things like VR, right? We're all looking at VR. How does VR fit into that? How are we going to bring the VR experience? And the next would be an example in our latest campaign that we've got these sunglasses from this Australian company. Not sunglasses, but they're like visual glasses you use when you're at the cinema. And so when you go out and you look at it, if you lift your head up or you lift your head down, you're getting two different experiences. We're sort of showing that duality again that I spoke of earlier, sort of like commodified, like just going somewhere, or going somewhere living like a local, right? So you get both from the same thing. So we're looking at a lot of those things.
And if you think about it, what Paul has taken us through is new and emerging that allows us to tell a deeper and richer story that is all tied back to the vision of Airbnb, and that therefore is going to result in higher engagement, and in this case, both the host and the guest engagement. But that's what that new emerging technology is allowing us to do, a huge richness there.
So we're probably going to have a couple of minutes for some questions, but I guess just to round off on this, we've spoken about where people go and where they're going to. You know, where is Airbnb's next stop? Where do they head from here?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. I can't talk about it too much. Here's a couple of things I'll share. So, and I think they're pretty self-evident. And I've talked about some of them today. First, we're a human-powered company. So you're going to continue to see us do things that are about people, micro-entrepreneurs. How can we empower that? How can we expand on that? You're not going to see us do other things just because it could add revenue in the short term, right? It's all going to be about people. The next thing is about experiences. So how can we drive more experience? How can we make people have a more interesting journey, trip, change their life? And so when you look at those two things, you extrapolate it out, you can let your imagination go wild. I can't talk too much about it, but that's the direction. And you're going to see a lot of things coming out through this year that empower that. The next big product release and the next big evolution in the Airbnb journey will be in November. So we're going to be sharing that in November.
And part of what I love about that is, and particularly for our industry a lot, everybody sort of wants to bifurcate things, right? Is it the data industry now, and have we lost sight of human or whatever? And it's always going to be an art and science business. And actually, as you think about, what we've talked about and what Paul's just talked about, their vision of it is always the combination of both, right? They're going to have the technology of the platform and continue to refine it and localize it, which makes it all seamless and easy for the consumer to use. But you're only going to do that if there's a human connection as to why. And they're so dead on in understanding that that's really the blend of marketing that needs to continue.
Well, I think it's that blend that really helps get that message home, because it's about utilising traditional ad formats, be it in TV, outdoor, augmenting it with digital, and making people feel comfortable, because as you say, that is the barrier. Once you've broken through that barrier and got comfortable with letting strangers into your house or going to a stranger's house, then you're hooked. And I have 20 times been in a stranger's house.
So to build on both those comments, I think there's one interesting thing to kind of end off with. So at the beginning, I talked about the founders, and I talked about the community. If you look at the founders, they are art and science. So two of our co-founders went to one of the top schools in the US for industrial design. They're designers, obsessed with design. That's why our products and our ads and things look the way they do. But the third co-founder, he paid his way through Harvard for computer science by running his own businesses. So basically, he was already very successful. He made $1 million or something before going to school. And so you've got this science, this super entrepreneur guy, and you've got these designers. When you bring those things together, it's interesting. And I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had in my time at Airbnb so far is this story. So every Sunday night, Brian sends us out an email. It's whatever's on his mind, some thoughts, something he learned early on in our culture. And he sent out this one email, and the headline, the subject line said, "Find your opposite." And you're kind of like, okay. And when you read through it, what he said was, everyone should find a person to work with, to partner with, who has the same values as they do, but thinks the opposite way. Because even though you're going to have tensions, even though you're going to have those tough moments, you're going to trust each other, and you're going to come up with a much better answer. Don't go and find people who think like you. You're going to get the same answer. So push to that more difficult answer.
So we've probably got time for 2 quick questions or one longer one, if anyone has anything. Oh, shout out.
Hi, Paul. I was just wondering if you've observed any sort of general trends or comparisons in international markets between the number of bookings that happen across your website versus the app. You've talked about both. Is there anything that you could share with us?
The website to the app?
Yeah.
Sure. So I think general trends would be kind of self-evident in the sense that there's a massive shift to mobile. Right? Travel's a laggard for bookings on mobile. E-commerce is way ahead, but it's moving quickly now. So that rate of change is tipping faster than ever before. In key markets like China, and we're lucky enough, one of the few American sort of early stage tech companies to be in China, it's almost 100% mobile. And so we get almost all of our bookings through mobile. So you can see how things are changing. And I think like one important takeaway to me for everyone in this room would be this. It would be if your business works in China, and many of you, especially agencies, I expect you'll have a division in China, you should be watching it really closely because they're becoming the leading indicator for where the market's going. They're doing things on mobile that the rest of us aren't doing yet. And so we're really passionate about that, and we're making a huge investment in China because of that.
Yeah, certainly that pace of change is something that is a challenge to keep up with even for the best of businesses.
Yeah.
There's a question over here.
Hi. I'm an emerged startup myself, and my question is more about positioning, because when you started out 8 years ago, you were in a very niche place. What you were trying to build was a very habit-changing product, and this is the same situation as ours. And second, when you're a startup, your resources are very limited. So how did you position yourself with the stranger danger sort of concept? Because one, it was a different experience for a host to welcome some stranger to their house, and a second, as a traveler coming to a new house and living with people. So how did you overcome that and let people know that that's the trend, that's the new trend, and you have to just get on that train, otherwise just miss the buzz?
Yeah, so I think just kind of two thoughts on that. It would be the first, you can't force anyone to do things, right? But their friends could probably do it. So it's a lot about social proof and bringing that out. That's one of the real powers of community. In my last couple of days here, what I've heard a lot of companies, brands, agencies speaking about, I was judging yesterday, is this idea of like building a community. We have a community. And so one of the reasons why we want to be a community-driven super brand is to get that social proof, right? And that social proof moves things forward. And only our community could do that. If I come and push you and hassle you, you're going to be like, Paul, go away, right? If your friends come and say, hey, I had a great experience, you're going to feel differently about it. So it's kind of number one. Number two is the reason why the product is so important for facilitating is the product has a lot of trust and safety built into it, right? The reviews, the way the reviews happen. We do a lot of things on the back end, the way the payments work, right? All these things help out, And people are always scared to call customer service, but if you call our customer service, if you get a hold of someone, and you will, they'll take care of you. Like we go out of our way to make sure people are good because we understand that if you have a good experience, you'll come back and book again. And as a company, we're not trying to get bookings. We want to get customers. We want to get people in our community. We have a very long-term view of our business, not a short-term view. So hopefully that helps answer.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Lisa, Paul. Hopefully you all found that interesting. And yeah, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.